Lot, whose righteous soul was vexed every day. Lot's name is very fitting because he had a lot of sheep, he had a lot of servants, he had a lot of wealth, but Lot also had a lot of problems. And one of those problems that he had, or his main issue, the main problem that he faced every day, was that he lived in a world of sin. A world that was once perfect, but it had now been deformed by man's sin. The Lord had already destroyed the world, as Brother Joe just taught us in Genesis chapter 6. But it wasn't long after when men would depart once more. And Lot was living in Sodom and Gomorrah. What we would term, if today we should term it, if we had a phrase for it, we would call it the sin city of the world. And Lot had his house right in the midst of them. But Lot is described as a righteous man. He lived there, but he didn't practice what they were doing. Lot must have been vexed. Lot must have been disappointed. Lot must have been sad to see what they were doing every single day. But Lot also must have been angry. In Ephesians 4 verse 26, it tells us that, be angry and sin not. Lot was angry, but he didn't sin. At least not in this instance. But how was Lot righteous, or how was he able to preserve or show his righteousness? In Genesis, if you'll turn with me to Genesis chapter 12, Genesis 12, and we'll look at verse 4, verse 1 through to verse 4. It reads, Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, and unto a land that I will show thee, and I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curse at thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So Abram departed, as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years when he departed from Haran. Lot was righteous because he was willing to leave the known, which was Haran at this point in time, for the unknown. He was willing to go with his uncle when he didn't even know where his uncle was going. If you pay attention to the passage that was just read, it shows that the main person in the passage was Abram. Abram was the one that received the message from God to go. But then in verse 4, as what we may consider to be an afterthought, just a little small phrase you see, and Lot went with him. But he was also righteous because he lived by example. Lot's life was exemplary. If ever an example that we as Christians need to follow, then we should also emulate Lot. Some of his characteristics. While in a sinful land, he strived to maintain his relationship with God. In some aspects, Lot can remind us of Job. How? Lot would lose some of his family members due to the sin and due to the world. But through it all, Lot would remain faithful to God. But Lot was also willing to love to the utmost. In Genesis 19, verse 8, we read of the scenario where the men tried to come in to know the angels. But Lot was willing to offer his own. He was willing to protect the servants or the messengers of God. And for us, that seems like a very hard thing to do. Something that many of us would seem to be not morally right. But Lot was willing to offer them to protect God's messengers. But Lot was also willing to lead his family from sin. In Genesis 19, verse 1, we read where they were told that they had to leave the city. Before that, in chapter 18, we read where Abraham was negotiating with the angels. He kept saying to them, suppose you can find 50 in the land. Will you spare the land? Then, and from 50, he gradually went down, until he finally came to 10. But there was not even 10 individuals in that land that God would spare it. Lot was able to lead his family, to lead those who were faithful, his family of 4, out of the gates of Sodom. The life that Lot lived was a portrayal of his righteousness. But we just looked at why Lot was righteous, or why he could be considered to be righteous. But why was he vexed every day? Have you ever been angry? Have you ever been upset or vexed? We could blame it on Lot because he could have probably chosen to live in somewhere better. We could blame it on his place of residence. We could blame it on him for pitching his tent towards Sodom and eventually residing among them. But the source of Lot's vexation, the source of his anger, boils down to one 3-letter word: sin. Sin. It was sin that caused Adam and Eve to get cast out of the garden. It was sin that causes a separation between man and God. And it's that very same sin that caused Lot to be angry. Brethren and friends, we need to be angry at sin. We need not to take pleasure in sin. Sin needs to make us upset. But we also need to seek to make it right. In Galatians 5, verse 19 to 21, it lays out exactly what the sins of the flesh are, or the works of the flesh are. And then if you'll turn with me to 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1 to verse 4, it also tells us exactly what they are. It says, "This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God." Doesn't this sound like Sodom and Gomorrah? But let's bring this closer home. Doesn't this sound like the world that we're living in today? Doesn't it sound as if we have pitched our tent at times in the midst of a sinful world, in the midst of a sinful city? But as we learn in Matthew, that we need to let our lights shine. Wherever we go, we need to be shining. We need to be that light that guide others to Christ. Lot had more than enough reason to be vexed. As Christians, we have more than enough reasons to be vexed. And if the sins or if the deeds of the world at times do not make us angry, then we need to evaluate our lives. But there are many lessons also that we can learn from Lot. The first one being that we must guard against sin and its various forms and enticements. In 1 Peter 5, verse 8, it reminds us that the devil, our adversary, he's walking around as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. If you don't have your defenses up, he's going to pull you down. If you're not ready when he comes, he's going to take you. But we also learn that the same sins of Sodom and Gomorrah, they're still present today. Ecclesiastes 1:9 reminds us that there's nothing new under the sun. The very same sins that we see today, they were being practiced back then. But also at times we may become discouraged. Lot was not able to save Sodom and Gomorrah. He was only able to save his family. Noah was not able to save everyone that he preached to. He was only able to save his family. We too will not be able to save everyone. But we need to ensure that wherever we go, our light is shining, because we do not know who we might influence to follow the Lord.